Hi again, YouTubers. Well, the Pope is gone. The Pope has disappeared and flown back to Italy. And so it's time really for the summary of the visit by the Pope, which should end this little quartet of videos that I've made. The Pope, I've just been reading in the news actually, looking up what the general news is from the on the internet. And it says, Pope declares success after 4 days. He's actually still on the plane on the way back at this moment, but Pope declares success after 4 days. Yeah, that's because he's his own fucking critic. I'm sorry to swear, but it just pushes the point, you know. It's a bit like God, isn't it, when he made the world and saw it that it was good. His own critic. Reverend Federico Lombardi, who we have seen a lot of over the last few days, he said it was not the turnout that was important, but the warning against secularists, meaning atheists mostly. Which I've said, right at the beginning, that's what was the idea of the entire thing, and it turns out that was the idea of the whole thing. But the British media, they've sort of run a constant vigil. They've been backed only by biased Catholic priests mostly. Nearly everybody they've had with them, with the sort of the commentators, have been other Catholic priests. I don't mean the commentators were Catholic priests, I mean the people with them were nearly all Catholics. Hardly ever was there somebody with the commentator that wasn't, as it were, and had a different opinion. So only biased really interviews were ever given. Now Richard Dawkins, he turned up to give a brilliant speech, which hopefully will be on the YouTube somewhere soon. And he gave this speech to about 10,000 supporters that turned up, supporters of his, or at least atheists, that turned up to really protest the Pope's visit, or at least make their voices heard, I think is probably more to the point. And this was a brilliant speech, but it only made a very small sort of news item. Most of the time the news was, oh, look at the lovely fluffy bunny priest, look at the lovely Pope, isn't he a nice man? And people saying, oh, he's ever such a nice man. Well, I'm sure Hitler was a nice man when he was on state visits. You know, it's that's not really the point. Anybody can be a nice man for a while. But anyway, David Cameron, right at the end, he had a particularly sickening speech. It was real arse-licking stuff, I gotta be honest, and it was creepingly he sort of agreed with, is creepingly a word? Anyway, creepingly, I'm going to use it. Creepingly, he agreed to take note of the secularist threat, as it were, that was gripping the country, as if it's a bad thing, really, you know. Secularist. I know I'm repeating myself from other videos, but okay. The Pope, he apologised once again for the pervy priests, as it were, the paedophiles, and heartfelt sincerity of how appalling these things are, but once again didn't really address the issue that he has been in, or at least been in a position to stop these things happening now for probably the last 30 years, or at least bring them to the public's attention. And in fact he was of course hiding most of the time these facts. Now the old foreigners, the Algerians, they got released without charge. Apparently they were overheard in a canteen plotting against the Pope, but in fact they found no weapons and no evidence of really anything happening. So they were let off, as it were, but it did cost an awful lot in security, and it was a very large police operation, and no doubt expensive. He met up with child abuse victims, which is nice of course, but it doesn't actually make anything better, does it? I'm sure that, for instance, the chairman of BP, he would have looked out upon a map and saw the appalling oil spill, but looking at it doesn't actually make it better. Again, if you look at something as an analogy, the BP oil spill, This guy got the sack. I'm sure he didn't personally want an oil spill. I'm sure he would have done anything to stop an oil spill, but he got the sack. It's true, you know, after a couple of weeks of working every single day, he did take a day off work, and a couple of things he said which weren't probably, I'm talking about the BP guy now, the chairman of them. And you know, he said a couple of things which probably weren't the right things to say, but for that, he was sacked. He got kicked out. Now, why is it the Catholic Church is immune to this sort of thing? It's immune to that. Anyway, let's go on, because the Pope, of course, did not do any debates. He came along and he preached, as preachers do. He came along and he put his point of view. Now, that was nice of him, but he didn't do any TV interviews. He didn't go up against Jeremy Paxton. Now, if you're not in Britain, you wouldn't know who Jeremy Paxton is, but nobody wants to go up against him. And he didn't get any questions asked. He just preached. He just put his point of view, which is fair enough, but with the sort of news coverage that he got and the sort of limited time, I suppose, he could make the excuse that he didn't need to do any interviews. He could tell everybody what he thought. No questions asked. Basically, it was a holiday for the Pope, wasn't it? No more, no less. It was a bit of a holiday. It was strange at the holiday. I'm sure he wasn't looking forward to it. But then I've been on holidays that I didn't really enjoy either. Positive points. There are positive points, of course, of this this visit. I particularly like the Queen's hat. Now our Queen has she wore this huge top hat, and you probably don't know this, but the Queen's only probably a couple of inches off being formally classified as a midget. Is it midget or dwarfism? Anyway, she's very short and she wore this huge hat, and if you look at any of the footage you'll find that she can now be exactly the same size as the Pope by wearing this huge hat, and it was a very sort of ridiculous hat, but nonetheless it was less ridiculous than the Pope's hat, let's be honest. Anyway, let me have a think for a minute and I'll finish this up. So for me to sum up, what has the Pope's visit meant for me? Well, what I wanted to see and what I wanted to hear from the Pope, if anything, is that he denies completely any involvement in any cover-ups in the Vatican over the last 30 years. It's easy to do. All you have to do is say, I had nothing to do with this. This was nothing to do with me. And being a Pope, you would believe him. Because lying would be a huge sin if he was found out. But he won't say that. He has never ever said, this had absolutely nothing to do with me. And I could have done something about it, and I personally failed to do something about it. That's what I want to hear from the Pope. And then if he's caught out later, we know exactly what to do. But he won't. He won't say it because I believe that he has got a personal involvement in it. It's very easy just to deny it. But let's face it, you can't really lie if you're a Pope. I don't lie, believe it or not. I may have sometimes hidden the truth, but I'll never lie. But that's what I think he's doing. When I say I've hidden the truth, there's been things in the past where somebody asks you a question, for instance, and you think, this is really going to hurt this person's feelings if I tell them the truth. It could be something quite simple, like, do you like my hair? My wife's good at that. Do you like my hair? I go, yes. Because I've learned in the past that if I said, preferred it the way it was before, well, she won't talk to me for a week. Now, so I learned very quickly that I want to tell her the truth, but it's probably best to skirt around it somewhere. Do you like my hair? It's very nice. Very nice doesn't actually mean that, but I might have preferred it before, but it's nice now. You know, it can be like that. Now, all the Pope has to do is actually say, I had nothing to do with any of this. It's nothing to do with me. It was never anything to do with any of my departments, and I knew nothing about it. A personal get out, as it were. But no, nothing about that. And nobody's mentioned it. Nobody's mentioned it, never does. It's always, let's always respect faith, respect religion. Never point out the bad points, never even criticise it. And that's what I've been doing, of course, is criticising the religion. And something that covers things like this up, really, why do people believe in them? Why do they want anything to do with them? I don't know, I'm waffling now at the end. But catch, if you can, that speech by Richard Dawkins. It was quite brilliant. Peace for now. Hopefully this will be my last thing on the Pope. I'll leave it alone now for a while. And it's caused a little bit of sort of a stir anyway. I've had quite a few comments on it. I've even had quite a few personal attacks, which I'm quite enjoying actually, for a change. Take care, peace. I'm going.